Okay, picture this. It's August 1984 at Eagle Farm Racecourse in Brisbane, Australia. The track is dry, the crowd is settled, it's just another race on the card. Nothing particularly remarkable. The horse stepping into the gate is called Fine Cotton. This horse is not a favorite to win. At the betting stations, a huge bet gets placed on Fine Cotton though, which seems strange because this horse is a long shot. It raises a few eyebrows. A betting plunge like this usually does. But the gates open and almost immediately Fine Cotton is moving fast. He pushes ahead of the pack, clears space, holds position, and then crosses the finish line by literally a hair. But there's a small problem because there's paint streaming down the legs of Fine Cotton, revealing another horse altogether. Hi, and welcome to another episode of True Crime Culinary. I am your host, Leah, and in this podcast, we look at stories behind food history and the small details that change everything. This weekend was the Kentucky Derby. I'm married to someone from Kentucky, and yes, he does love it when I call it the great state of Kentucky. Growing up, he would go to Churchill Downs, which is where the Derby is run. I had to ask him today. And I hear it's a big business in hats and good snacks. And thus it got me thinking, hey, where do Snickers come from? You know, the chocolate bar. I know you were totes thinking the same thing, right? See, I knew we would get along, and this is why you follow, rate, and support the show. So let's trot through this crazy story and see how horses are connected to this delicious treat. Okay, first things first, Frank Mars of the Mars Chocolate Company actually knew how to make chocolate bars himself. Respect. It is silly, but I didn't even think about the fact that people had to make some of these bars by hand back in the day at the turn of the century. He also knew how to make nougat, which if you've ever made it, you know this is a real pain in the beehole. You have to get sugar boiling at just the right temperature, combine it with egg whites at just the right temperature, then add in nuts or vanilla, then try not to stick yourself or any of your valuables, children, or pets to this sticky friend while it cools for hours. Also, hope you got the ratio right because it can go from pillow soft to emergency dentist call in but a few moments. But our friend Frank could make this delicious treat. He married his wife, Ethel, in 1910. Do I wonder whether he made her treats on their dates? I sure do, and I sure hope he did. As part of the Mars Company, he experimented with a number of bars. Particular to these fickle friends of chocolate and nougat, he first made the Milky Way bar in 1923. That bar is caramel, vanilla nougat, and chocolate. The popular and made him a ton of money. He was riding the industrialization wave and getting shelf-stable products on the market. So once he figured out how to do this by hand, he was able to translate that to mass production. With the money he made from the Milky Way bar, he experiments with a bar that's got nuts in it. And thus we have the first Snickers bar in 1930, released by him and his wife Ethel. But it's just a candy bar. If you listen to episode 31, Ketchup History and the Ketchup Assault, you know that there is actually Heinz and Hunt's ketchup, but only one made it to the International Space Station. And there's a reason for that. So Snicker entered the market at a very specific time that benefited it. In the early 1930s, it was the Great Depression. So food needed to be affordable, filling, and accessible. And Snickers delivered on all three. It wasn't marketed as a luxury. It was positioned as something closer to like a really satisfying snack, something that could actually hold you over. Peanuts added fat and a small amount of protein. Caramel and nougat delivered, may I just say, a lot of sugar. After watching a YouTube video on how to make nougat, it is sugar. But together they created a dense, calorie-rich bar. Roughly 250 calories. Fun fact, the actual net weight of Snickers bars has varied a little bit over the years, but roughly 250 calories. It provides quick energy that your body can digest quickly because it's got a lot of sugar in it. So that combination made it appealing not just as candy, but also something super practical. As Mars expanded, Snickers became one of their flagship products. And by the mid-20th century, it was widely distributed across the US. And then it went international. In the UK and several other markets, it was sold under a different name though, called Marathon. I read they named it Marathon because they were worried that Snickers sounded too much like knickers a la underpants. And I just think that is so ridiculous and deeply British. That name stayed in place until 1990 when then Mars standardized global branding and then unified everything under the name Snickers. But again, why is Snickers so popular when there are other bars that were competing for competition, such as the Three Musketeers or Milky Way, which were also under the Mars company, or Ye Old Baby Ruth bar, which was a different company. Or like a product that didn't last, such as the 7-Up bar, a segmented bar with multiple flavors, and the best I can think of it is like, imagine 7 C's candies smushed together in one uniform bar. That was discontinued in the 1970s. So what got Snickers to be so much more popular than everything else? It's called the 1984 Olympics, which Snickers sponsored as the official snack. I found a note that said, nutritionists were outraged, which is just adorable. The international media gave Snickers a huge boost, and that awareness, that excitement stuck. Since then, a ton of marketing campaigns have really zeroed in on the fact that Snickers are really filling and that it can help you when you're really hungry. You might have seen one with like Betty White or Joe Pesci. Personally, I see Snickers in a lot of my athletic activities. I do love a trail run, and I dabble in distance and hang out with people who love nothing more than tempting the nipple-chafing gods along a 50 or 100-mile course. And it gets expensive to feed that habit, so you start looking for things that are easy to digest, easy to carry, and actually taste good. So my go-to snack is a PB and honey sandwich, but it is closely followed by Snickers. So I am not surprised to read that Snickers is sold in over 100 companies, 100 countries, and remains one of the best-selling candy bars in the world. Mars Incorporated itself is now one of the largest privately held companies globally. They're not paying me for any of this, but I did check their website, and they have some cool initiatives to support science and diversity and inclusion. We do love a company that supports the community. Okay, but again, why did I bring up horse racing? And may I just say the wait is over. In 1930, the name of the chocolate bar, Snickers, came from Ethel Mars's favorite racing horse, named Snickers. How cute is that? Apparently they bought a huge amount of land and a ton of horses to have there because she was just like a huge fan. And unfortunately, the actual horse named Snickers died 2 months before Snickers hit the market, but the name stuck because it was like a little ode to their favorite horse. 1984, big year for Snickers in the Olympics. But what about in Brisbane? What was happening there? Let's get back to Fine Cotton. Poor Fine Cotton is just standing there going like, I just ran a race. I am tired. Why is everybody looking at my legs as paint be running down there? I imagine someone has a small gasp because there, beneath the paint revealing itself, are markings. Someone yelled, "Ring in," which I do believe is horse racing language for, yo, what the fuck? Officials look a little closer. This horse just doesn't look right, and the dye used to alter the horse's appearance is now clearly visible, flowing down in rivulets, I imagine. Turns out the horse that ran the race was not Fine Cotton. It was another horse entirely, a much faster one named Bold Personality. The story is totally batshit. So basically, this group of horse people get bamboozled by a con artist with no fewer than like 150 items on his rap sheet. The horse switcheroony was always part of the plan. They thought, we're going to put a faster horse into a race where no one expects this horse to go fast. We're all going to bet on the anticipated losing horse, and we're going to make big dollars. Originally, the 2 horses that they were going to switch were basically identical. But then the horse that they were going to use gets injured. They bring in another horse. This is Fine Cotton. But then they're looking at the horses and they're like, oh, they are different colors, different markings, noticeably different horses. So they first reach for boxed hair dye. Too difficult. Then they go spray paint. The expectation was that no one was going to notice. I really think that they forgot about the concept of sweat because the odds were so bad for Fine Cotton, they were going to have an enormous win. They were going to make so much money. But this is a very intense business. Apart from all the nasty stuff that happens behind the scenes that I'm not a fan of, I'm going to focus in on the horse part. Millions of dollars come out of these hooved affairs as people are betting and making, good and bad decisions. But this entire betting system rests on trust. You have to be able to trust that you are betting on the animal that you think you're betting on. Because you're not spending every moment with these animals that you are betting on. You have to be able to identify these animals quickly and effectively. I've worked with a lot of animals, such as baboons, cheetahs, leopards, dags, and I can tell you that once you get to know animals, even if they look very similar, you can tell them apart very quickly because you're looking at some of their characteristics. But that's super difficult. Just like with people, it takes you a few seconds to get to know them, to kind of remember what their mannerisms are, what they look like, how tall they are. Same thing with animals. So there are usually a few characteristics that you might look for to help you identify animals consistently. I'm guessing that with horses, it's height, build, gait, markings, and color. So they thought the horses are similar sizes, we just have to cover up the color thing. A little spray paint may have worked, but the other problem is that officials were already super sus by the huge bet, because people usually are stupid for a reason. So officials were like, disrobe the animal. They took the saddle and the leg guards off the horse and discovered it was indeed bold personality. The race was declared void, the second place horse was awarded the win, and several people went to jail. Even people who did not bet on the horses went to jail. They also received lifetime bans from horse racing. Crazy, right? Makes you wonder if maybe they just had a Snickers, they would have made better decisions. Or is that too soon? Until next time, stay curious and be careful what's in your cup. Check out our show notes for sources, hit that subscribe button, rate and review the podcast anywhere you listen.